Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Inquirer Live at Gameday Central alongside Jeff McLane. I am Olivia Reiner. We are coming at you live from Lincoln Financial Field as we get set for the Eagles' regular season finale against the Washington Commanders. Jeff, I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth already. How you doing?
I am doing very well. It's very interesting that we do enter another season finale with the Eagles not playing their starters. It seems like this has been more the case than not since Nick Sirianni has taken over controls, which speaks to his success and the fact that he has gotten the playoffs in each of the 5 years that he's been head coach, and also has the luxury to afforded to teams that are guaranteed a spot. And I know there's still a little bit here to play for in terms of seeding, but the opportunity to rest most of your starters is something that shouldn't be taken for granted, and it looks like Nick Sirianni will do that today.
No starters, plenty of stakes in today's game, whether it's playoff seeding or even just getting to see some of the depth players that we don't get to see a lot of typically, especially Tanner McKee, as he is expected to start at quarterback. We will unpack all of that for you in just a minute. However, before we get into things today, just a reminder to everyone out there watching, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're watching over on inquire.com/Eagles Gameday, you can leave us a comment or a question down in the chat there. Also, if you're watching on social media, YouTube, X, Facebook, wherever you are, we want to hear from you. You can leave us a question down in the comment section, the chat function, and we will answer some of those throughout our show today. All right, Jeff, let's get our chart out here to explain exactly what the Eagles' seeding implications are for today's game. With a win, the Eagles have a chance to improve to the number 2 seed in the NFC. However, that is going to depend on how the Chicago Bears game tonight against the Detroit Lions fares. If the Bears lose and the Eagles win today's game, they have the opportunity to be the number 2 seed, which would be a pretty big benefit, in my opinion, to them. That would mean that they're facing the number 7 seed in the wild card round next weekend in the Green Bay Packers. Now, if that does not work out, if the Eagles end up being the number 3 seed in the NFC, that would mean they're either going to face the San Francisco 49ers or the Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round. That all just depends on how the Rams fare in today's game. If they beat the Cardinals, the 49ers would end up playing the number 3 seed, or the Eagles if they end up being the number 3 seed, or if the Rams lose, that means that they would play the Eagles if the Eagles are the number 3 seed again. Jeff, given all of the potential permutations and combinations of what could happen to the Eagles in the wild card round, A, what is the ideal scenario for them? And B, what is the most likely scenario out of the 3 options?
Well, I don't think there's like an ideal scenario, but finishing number 2 versus number 3, gives you the Packers who have done more losing than winning over the last month. You're not really sure where Jordan Love stands. I think he's been cleared of his concussion symptoms. He's out of the protocol. He won't play in this finale because they can't improve their seeding. But you have to wonder about his state and obviously the offense, and certainly on the other side of the ball, Micah Parsons will not play, and that's obviously their best player, and they have some other issues. So, yeah, the number 2 seed, the benefit of playing the Packers is not a big one, but it's one I think they'd rather have than facing the 49ers or the Rams, 2 teams that are playing a little bit better at this stage of the season. And also there's the possibility of having, the home field next week. Now, they could still get the home field if let's say the Bears lose in the first round, which is possible. There's a lot of parity in the NFL and overall, but certainly in the NFC this year, and that's why I think the Eagles have as good a shot as almost any team of getting to the Super Bowl, at least based upon how the NFC is lined up right now. The Seattle Seahawks won yesterday, beat the 49ers. They're the number 1 seed, so clearly they'll have the easiest path. Won't have to play one more game than the other teams in the playoffs, and they have the opportunity to play at home the entire way until getting the Super Bowl. But if you look at the numbers, 49ers are going to most likely opponent, right? Even if the Eagles win, I think there's a 55% chance that it'll be the 49ers because the Rams will be playing to win, and they get that 5 seed. They'll have to, if they're the 5, they will face the winner of the NFC South, which we don't know yet who it will be. It'll be either the Carolina Panthers or the Tampa Buccaneers. We have to see how this game between the Falcons and the New Orleans Saints pans out. Right now, the Falcons are ahead And if the Falcons win, then the Panthers will get in. If the Falcons lose, then it'll be the Buccaneers by some miracle. So, yeah, that's the numbers there. In terms of if they lose, it's an 87.2% chance that'll be the 49ers, 12.8% chance that'll be the Rams. Again, that's all dependent upon how the Rams fare. So more than likely it's going to be the 49ers.
All right, well, we are slightly getting ahead of ourselves, right? Because this game still needs to happen between the Eagles and the Commanders. And in all likelihood, we are expecting to see most of the starters not play in today's game. Perhaps we'll see a few starters here and there on either side of the ball. However, we do know at the helm of this Eagles offense is going to be Tanner McKee, who gets his first start of the season. Seems like every time we see Tanner McKee, whether it's in the preseason or even this past season in Week 18 against the New York Giants and their starters, McKee is always ready to go. He is always rising to the occasion, no matter how big or small. And this is going to be pretty much the biggest stage he has faced, because there are actual playoff seeding implications on the line in today's game. Last year, you think back to a meaningless game against the New York Giants in Week 18 where there was nothing on the line, and he still performed pretty well. He had completed 27 of his 41 passes for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, in today's game, he's going to have a different core of receivers because simply the receivers are different, although there is a chance that Devontae Smith plays in this game. He is on the hunt right now for 1,000 yards on the season. He is just 44 yards away. We'll see if he ends up seeing the field in some capacity, but primarily the receivers that McKee is likely to have at his disposal for the majority of the game are Jahan Dotson, Darius Cooper, perhaps even Britton Covey, Grant Calcaterra, second string tight end, likely to see the bulk of the playing time in today's game. And ultimately, not only is this an important game for the Eagles, but this could potentially be an important game for McKee to showcase his abilities. He's set to become a free agent after this upcoming season. But perhaps the Eagles want to try to get something for him, and maybe they'll end up moving him in the offseason. We don't know, but this is a big game for Tanner McKee, both from a team perspective and from an individual perspective. How might this offense look different with McKee at the helm in today's game versus a Jalen Hurts, for example?
Right. Well, McKee doesn't give you much in terms of the run game. So, those types of plays will pretty much be out the window. Design quarterback runs, zone reads, RPOs. I mean, there could be an RPO there, or maybe one with it look like a run PR, run pass option play, but there will be no keeping the ball in terms of Tanner. In the case of Tanner McKee, that being said, there'll probably be a little more, I think, in the drop back game. Jalen, has a certain amount of plays that he likes that we've seen them be successful with, but I think there's an opportunity for Kevin Petula to kind of dip deeper into his bag in terms of the drop back game. This is something that he specializes in. He's been a pass game coordinator. He has brought a lot of the RPR concepts to the Eagles. So like I just said, we're not going to play the RPR game, but my point being that the pass portion of that is what Kevin specializes in. And, under center play action will certainly be something that we'll see Tanner McKee do when he has done it in the last 2 games that he's played, the 2 meaningful games. I'm sorry, not meaningful. He came in the last drive against the Raiders, went play action pass twice, completed both of those passes for, I think it was like 29 yards. And then in that game against the Giants in the season finale, I think he completed like 6 of 8 for like about 70 yards and a touchdown. So this is something that he can do. Jalen Hurts has improved in that regard, but it's something that the Eagles don't do a lot of because it's not something that he was comfortable with for many, many years. He didn't do it in college. They've kind of gradually given him more of that on his plate. But this is something that Tanner has done a lot of. And I think that, it's an opportunity to kind of open up the offense a little bit, get things going on the ground in that under center game. We've seen it at various points this year. We saw it a lot of it against the Raiders, and that's why Tanner did it when he finally came into that game. They're trying to ice the game in that respect. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna hold back on Tanner dropping. I don't think it's gonna be hand off to Tank Bigsby or Will Shipley the entire game.
Mm-hmm. Well, McKee, as I mentioned, expected to start, but we are going to end up seeing a number of starters in today's game simply because the Eagles can't call up everyone off the practice squad. And some guys still ultimately need to get some work too, especially at edge rusher. That's going to be a position to don't have the numbers there on the 53-man roster. We saw Brandon Graham and Nolan Smith actually warming up quite a bit right here before warm-ups got underway, so they could see some playing time. Obviously, Josh Uche will see plenty of playing time. He has been inactive since he hasn't played since week 12. So it's been quite some time. He should get a fair workload. And then Jihad Campbell is someone that I'm kind of curious to see if he plays a little bit in today's game, simply because he made his first start last week since week 8 and potentially could be getting some more work in with Nakobe Dean still coming along here. He is inactive, of course, for today's game, but is potentially going to be back in time for the playoffs next week. I think today's game also adds some intrigue because we're going to see some unfamiliar faces in terms of the youth on this team that have not played very much, including cornerback Jacorian Bennett, whom the Eagles acquired in training camp from the Las Vegas Raiders. Defensive lineman Ty Robinson, center Drew Kendall, a couple of draft picks who haven't seen the field very much, especially not Kendall. But when you look at the complete picture of who we're expecting to see play in today's game, and you compare the depth of this Eagles team to the depth of the Eagles team last year that was able to beat the New York Giants handily, how do you think that the depth of these two rosters stack up?
15, Sam. Yeah, I think just the fact that you mentioned there'll be a number of rookies that are playing in this game, and rookies that have been, for the most part, inactive the entire season, which kind of speaks to the depth of the Eagles and the talent that they have, but also to the fact that these rookies haven't been able to get on the field or even dress at all. So I think that will make it difficult on the Eagles to win this game. Quite frankly, you're going to have guys at key spots, and Drew Kendall being one of them. He has played a little bit, a few snaps here and there, but he'll be at center. Starting center for the first time in his career. Mac McWilliams, we didn't mention him. I don't know if he's going to start over Jacorian Bennett, but I'm sure we'll see him out there a little bit. He hasn't been active for months. Cameron Williams just called off the activated off injured reserve just this past week. It sounds like he'll be at right tackle. Now maybe there's a chance he doesn't start there. Maybe Tyler Steen, they want to put him out at right guard to start, and Fred Johnson will start at left tackle, and Matt Pryor will be at right tackle, and then they'll slide him. But I think we're going to see Cameron Williams out there. So these are young players that haven't played much in the NFL, and they're going up against, for the most part, starters. Not a lot of not all the starters the Commanders will be playing in this game, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And then you look at even just kind of down across the board. You mentioned Ty Robinson hasn't really played much. He's going to get a ton of snaps. Byron Young has played a lot, but there's going to have to be a couple veterans that will play. Mora Jomo might have to take some snaps. Jalix Hunt, you mentioned, or Nolan Smith at the edge rusher position will have to play a little bit. Brandon Graham, who's now just a deep reserve, but they're going to need to get some snaps out of him, probably both inside and out. So yeah, that's why I thought last year, that was a team that won a Super Bowl, right? And that's why you were able to see Tanner McKee with a bunch of reserves go out there and win that game against not a good Giants team, but a starting Giants team. And, Tanner won't have Dallas Goedert, for instance. Last year, Dallas Goedert played in the first quarter because the Eagles want to get his legs back after he came off injury. So that's one key guy that he'll be missing that he had last year. Just one example. Jordan Davis is another one on the other side of the ball who played most of that game. Jordan Davis won't be playing in this game. Most likely he'll dress. But that speaks to how far he's come in a year, but also it speaks to what they'll have on the field in terms of winning this game, in my opinion.
Well, let's take a look at the other side of this Eagles-Commanders matchup and take a look at the Commanders. They are in a completely different situation than the Eagles, and certainly a different situation than the NFL would have anticipated when they scheduled a Week 18 Eagles-Commanders game, potentially with the aspiration that there would be playoff scenario implications on the line for both teams. But unfortunately for the NFL, it's just the Eagles in this game. The Commanders, though, are fighting for draft positioning. Quite a different race to be in at this time of year. They currently have the number 7 overall pick in the draft. They cannot drop any lower than that, but a loss in today's game would certainly benefit them in terms of their ability to move up in the draft order. At the end of the day, though, players do not tank. The teams will, front offices are the ones who are tanking out there. So the players who are out there in today's game, now granted, as you mentioned, Jeff, The Commanders are down quite a few important players, as we've already discussed a couple of weeks ago. Jaden Daniels has been shut down for the rest of the season. Marcus Mariota was injured in the game against the Eagles. He is inactive for today's game, and the Eagles are expecting to see Josh Johnson start at quarterback. Something I thought that was pretty interesting is that he made his second career start at the Link in 2009. The 39-year-old Johnson now making his just 11th career start in today's game just speaks to the longevity that he has been able to have in his career, even if he has not started very many games. That being said, this past week against the Cowboys, he was better, much better against the Cowboys than he was 2 weeks ago when he was thrown in there in the game, mid-game against the Eagles. Last week, he completed 15 of his passes out of 23 attempts for 198 yards, no touchdowns thrown. However, he didn't throw any interceptions either. And he's also going to be going into this game down some key offensive linemen and left tackle Laramie Tunsil, who also did not play 2 weeks ago against the Eagles, and center Tyler Biadasz. That's a new addition there for the Commanders, a new loss for them, as he was placed on injured reserve earlier in the week. When you look at this Commanders offense, especially in the passing game, what is the key to limiting Johnson and to limiting also his weapons? I mean, he's going to have some key receivers out there, and whether that's Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin, how do the Eagles keep all of them contained in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, look, you listen to Uncle Vic Fangio and whatever he has schemed up to prevent Johnson from going off. Not that I expect him to. As you mentioned, he kind of looked like he was overwhelmed when he got thrown out there in the middle of the game, threw a really bad interception to Cooper DeJean. A little bit better last week against the Cowboys. Not a very good Cowboys defense. A number of those plays, they had big explosive plays, were schemed up. Two of them in particular to Deebo Samuel. One was a screen. One was an end around. They also got a 72-yard touchdown run, from Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who seems to be their primary running back at this point. And he's got wheels. He's pretty good. But as you mentioned, not having 3/5 of your regular starting offensive line is going to create issues against the Eagles' backup defensive front. So I think it's going to be probably end up being not a really high scoring affair. And Terry McLaurin certainly can go off against any cornerback, let alone a backup like Keely Ringo or someone like Ja'Cory Bennett. So you got to be wary of him. I imagine that they'll probably focus most of their safety help towards his side to limit his effectiveness. The Deebo Samuel doesn't have really kind of the explosiveness that he once had and doesn't really get a lot of separation. But when he gets the ball in his hands, he's pretty dangerous and pretty hard to bring down. So I imagine they'll try and scheme up ways to get him the ball. The Eagles have to tackle the catch, something that you always got to do against every team. But I think in this respect, going up against a Cliff Kingsbury schemed offense, you're going to have to be wary of that. He's going to have a lot of misdirection motion. There won't be a lot of under center, but there'll be a lot of pistol. There'll be play action out of the pistol. So those players, this is the opportunity for them to show something. I think they have some talent at the inside linebacker spot, so I don't imagine there's going to be a significant major dropped off there. But Jeremiah Trotter Jr. has shown that he can step in there and play. As you mentioned, Jahad Campbell, I think, will play some snaps. And you also have Smile Mondon. He showed something during camp. We haven't seen much of him on defense, and it's been a long year of him on special teams, so I'm not really sure what I should expect. But I think it'll be interesting to see a young player like him and what he can do, and whether that means maybe next offseason you feel not as inclined to bring back Nakobe Dean, or because you have such great depth at the linebacker position. So these are kind of in some ways tryouts. The Eagles are going to play this game to win. There's no doubt about it. But you have to understand there's Jalen Hurts isn't going to be out there, Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Jalen Carter, Zach Bond on down the line. They're going to be lacking in a lot of talent.
Well, if the Commanders want to try to take some of the pressure off of Johnson in today's game, they may look to hand the ball off early and often. And someone to keep an eye on, if that is the case, is, as you mentioned, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Last week, he got the lion's share of the carries in the run game. It's worth noting, I believe, that Chris Rodriguez was inactive that this past week with an illness. He is active, so is second stringer Jeremy McNichol. So we'll see how they end up distributing the carries in today's game. However, last week, Krosky Merritt had 11 carries for 105 yards, including that 72-yard touchdown. He was able to take it to the house last week. He's had he's been one of the bright spots for the Commanders in terms of their offense this season, which hasn't had many bright spots, just being a rookie 6th round pick. very low expectations for him going into training camp, and then became the training camp darling and has ultimately had a fairly good season for the Commanders. So we'll see if he is able to get involved throughout today's game. So if the the Eagles have had a lot of success this season clamping down on the run overall, but especially over these last couple of months or so, coming out of the bye week, it has been markedly improved, perhaps minus the Bears fiasco just about a month ago. However, if the Eagles are going to maintain that same level of stoutness against the run, who is that going to fall on? And do you expect the backups to be able to kind of uphold that standard in today's game?
Yeah, look, this is something I'd asked Vic Fangio about last week, and it's amazing when you think about that. The Eagles have had the lightest number of box counts in the NFL, and by far, it's like almost like 60%. And I think the next team is like even less than 50%, and still get away with it and have a very good run defense. And that's kind of a philosophical thing for Vic Fangio. He's willing to kind of give up yards on the ground without sacrificing numbers in the back end, because those are where the bigger explosive plays come from. And, obviously throwing the ball down the field is how you pick up chunk yards, and running the ball not as much so. It's just kind of a percentage thing. And a lot of that has to do with Jordan Davis, quite frankly. I mean, he's been kind of the linchpin up front in terms of the run defense. He can clog up both gaps. He can take on blockers. And that kind of allows you to not have that extra guy in the box. And that's why the Eagles have been, for the most part, successful overall as entirely as a defense. So Byron Young's probably going to be that guy. They haven't played a significant amount of base defense this year, but they will play a 5-man front if there's a heavy front to go up against. And I imagine that the Commanders will do some of that. They don't have as many tight ends with Zach Ertz being out for the season. But so it'll be Byron Young, and then of course Ty Robinson. I'm kind of excited to see not excited. I'm kind of anticipating how he'll play. Intrigued, I guess is probably a better word. Young guy, the Eagles drafted in the 3rd round, and quite frankly, the fact that he hasn't been able to get on the field has been a little bit of a surprise. He's a little more of a pass rush guy than a run defense guy, but if he's going to have legs on this team and actually play significant snaps next season, he's going to have to do it in both regards. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. The second level line, defending the run, it takes all 11 guys, but the second level defenders are key. Jeremiah Trotter is an instinctive Mike linebacker, likes to get downhill. I think he'll have a good game, as we talked about Smile Mondin before and Jahad Campbell. And then the safeties, Sidney Brown, and it's probably going to be Brandon Johnson next to him. Brandon Johnson's been a guy the Eagles have had since training camp. And you saw early on in camp him play some nickel, but they also like him at safety. Not exactly his primary position, but Marcus Epps, who might have been forced to play in this past game, suffered a concussion, and he is out. They could have, I think you mentioned to me just off camera before we came on that Andre Sam, practice squad safety, ran out of call-up opportunities, so he will not be active. They'll have just basically those two guys at the safety spot. Michael Carter will play in the nickel for Cooper DeJean. Mac McWilliams might slide in there on occasion. So it's going to take all 11 guys to stop the run, and I imagine the Command.
All right, Jeff, I want to take this question here that we have on inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. This is from Eric. Eric says that the Eagles have a chance to get the number 2 seed. They should play their starters for the first half of the game at least. Maybe not a question, but an assertion, and perhaps a controversial assertion, or at least one that Nick Sirianni would disagree with, because that is not the route he is taking in today's game. What do you make of the decision to not play the starters? And do you agree with Eric at all that the starters should play part of this game, especially given the fact that there is an opportunity for them to clinch the second seed in the NFC?
I could see the argument from both sides. There is something still out on the table, but as Nick Sirianni said, and I thought it was just kind of an apt, succinct way of saying it. He's like, I can't control if we get the second seed. I can control my starters getting rest and the health benefits of that, the mental benefits that Jordan Mailata spoke about last week. And if you looked at the Eagles, whenever they've played on short weeks, they've kind of struggled. It's been a long year. They have a number of guys hurt. The Eagles inactives went up, and all the guys that are inactive have some sort of injury that they're dealing with at this point. So I think it makes sense in that regard. Yeah, are the Packers probably right now the team you'd rather face? If we talked about this earlier, of the three potential teams that you could face, would you like to have the opportunity to play at home both the first 2 weekends of the playoffs? Yeah, but I think with this team and where it is right now, I think the benefits of having a full week off is probably going to pay off in dividends. We'll see if that ends up being the case. We also saw last year that they didn't have the number one seed going into the playoffs, but they end up playing home throughout. And as I mentioned before, there is parity, so there's an opportunity that even with the Bears get that number 2 seed, that they'll lose in the first round of the Packers, a division rival that they have lost to before, whether it's home or not. And the Eagles could be back here no matter what. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I can see it both ways. I think ultimately I side with Nick Sirianni in his decision here.
All right, Eric, thank you for your question. Let's flip it on over to our player picks for today's game, Jeff. We've discussed plenty of different players so far on our show. However, if there was one you're most intrigued by, who would it be?
And you know what? I'm probably sure that most of the fans listening now probably are most intrigued beyond Tanner McKee, but Tank Bigsby has been kind of like a darling of Eagles fans who want to see more out of this run game. And look, I don't entirely kind of think that he should be given more snaps and more carries than Saquon Barkley. I think of all the entities involved in the struggles on the run game, I quite frankly think Barkley is the least of the offenders. That being said, Tank, when he's been out there, has really kind of showed some pop, and he's averaged 6.4 yards per carry. I think he's ran about maybe 40, 50 something times, and he's got a really good expected yards, number of rushing yards over expected, 98 yards, which is amazing when you think about how many carries he's had versus Barkley, who's had like 250 more carries and really has less expected yards. Yards over expected than Tank Bigsby. Now, I think the sample isn't big enough, and a lot of times when Tank gets in there, maybe teams aren't as prime, defenses aren't prime to stop him, and sometimes it's been garbage time type yards. So I don't want to make too much of that, but I do think when Tank has been out there, he's given the team a little bit of juice, and maybe they could have done a little more to get him touches over these last few months just to kind of switch things up. And maybe there's an opportunity in the postseason. Maybe they're just saving it. Maybe this is just the kind of all part of their plan. Like this is high Tank Bigsby, and all of a sudden we'll have these unbelievably schemed up run plays for Tank Bigsby. I'm not quite expecting that, but I think this will be interesting. He's not running behind the first unit offense, so everything has to be taken with a grain of salt in terms of how he performs. He's running behind guys, some who haven't even played very much this entire season. So that being said, Commanders don't have a really good run defense. In fact, it's one of the 4 worst in terms of expected yards, expected points added per rush in the league. The other thing I noticed when I was looking at that, Olivia, is that 3 of the 4 worst defenses in terms of EPA per rush are in the NFC East. So the Eagles would have faced in 6 games 3 of the 4 worst run defenses in the NFL, and frankly haven't been anywhere close to as good as they were last year. So thanks to my guy for today, and we'll see how he does with the backfield of Tanner McKee and Tank Bigsby.
Well, Jeff, I did not peg you for a tinfoil hat guy in terms of your conspiracy about the run game. But listen, I appreciate the creativity. I know you're kidding, but I'm a little skeptical. But wouldn't that be something if all of a sudden the run game just popped off in the playoffs with Tank Bigsby out there? I'm going to pick a player on defense instead of a player on offense. I'm going with Josh Uche. We mentioned him earlier in our show. We're expecting to see him a lot out there. He has only played about 28.2% of the defensive snaps. He has not played since week 12 back in November against the Dallas Cowboys. It has been some time for him, and he has kind of been a victim of the depth chart for the most part. The Eagles went out and acquired Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins at the trade deadline. Jalix Hunt has really come on. Nolan Smith, of course, the Eagles won out there. And Vic Fangio has said in the past he doesn't mind a 3-man rotation, and that's what they've gone with for the majority of the second half of the season with those 3 guys. And the odd man out has been Uche, and he's been inactive for most games in the second half of the season. he is active today. He is going to play. He was out there warming up, and he has some things on the line in today's game. If he registers 3 sacks, he'll reach 4 on the season, according to Spot Rack, and he will unlock a $250,000 incentive in his contract, which is a pretty nice little bonus there if he is able to do it. 3 sacks, it's a lot of sacks, but the Commanders' offensive line is quite banged up right now. No Laramie Tunsil. Josh Connerly Jr. has had a rocky season, so hey, never say never. it's certainly possible, but I'm very intrigued to see how Uche does in today's game. All right, Jeff, one last time in the regular season, I'm asking you to take out the crystal ball and to make your final score prediction for today's game.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Look, if the Eagles win, there's still a chance that they won't get that number 2 seed. So, there is something on the line here, and I think they'll play hard. I think that there'll be some bright moments for Tanner McKee, and certainly, as I mentioned before, for Tank Bigsby, and the defense, the scheme, behind Vic Fangio. I think they'll be able to keep the Commanders in check. I think it'll be a close one. I just think, as I mentioned earlier on the podcast, that I just don't think this team is as deep as last year's team that went on to win a Super Bowl. And I think you got a number of guys playing in key spots that haven't really played much this season or in the NFL at all. So I have the Eagles losing 23-20 to the Commanders. I do wonder about motivation for Washington. I do wonder about the whole, they have rested a bunch of guys in the whole tanking for better draft position. And quite frankly, maybe they owe the Eagles one in terms of doing it so poorly that it's obvious, as you recall, as you may recall in 2020 when the Eagles pulled Jalen Hurts late in the game. Maybe they pull Josh Johnson and throw out, I don't know, Terry McLaren there from under center, and that gives the Eagles the win. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm sure the Eagles will be watching the scoreboard too if the Bears go ahead by a lot. Anybody who will be playing significant snaps in the postseason will probably get pulled from this game, and they'll just go with whoever they have left in the cupboard. So, yeah, 23-20 Commanders. I don't feel particularly great about it, but that's been kind of the my motto for all season when it comes to the Eagles.
I don't feel particularly great about it. Yeah, I feel the same way, Jeff. I've got the Commanders winning 21-17. I just think that this Eagles team, in terms of the depth this season, is in a much different place compared to last season. This is a much more inexperienced group of backups out there. I think Tanner McKee, as I mentioned earlier in the show, has done a good job of keeping things competitive in every game that he has played. However, Tanner McKee is not throwing the ball to himself. He is not going up against the Commanders' offense, and Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel and all of those bona fide NFL starters. He is the one distributing the football, and he can only do so much. So while I have faith in him that he will keep this game competitive, I am a little more uncertain about the rest of the players out there in terms of the backup. So that's why I'm keeping it a relatively low-scoring game, a relatively close game to it, 21-17 Commanders. And ultimately, that would mean that the Eagles would be the number 3 seed, which, that I think that there is a path for them forward there. And as you mentioned, a lot of parity in the NFC this year, a lot of parity in the NFL. And even though the Eagles haven't necessarily had, at least on offense, the season that maybe they had wanted to, listen, once they're in the playoffs, who knows? I think that they've got experience, and a lot of these other teams don't have that experience, or they have been prone to making their own mistakes too, or having their own weaknesses. So I'm eager to get these playoffs underway. One last game to watch here for the Eagles and the Commanders, and I'm looking forward to this one as well. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a reminder, if you're not already over there, you can head on over to inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. We will be there during the game, throughout it, answering your questions, interacting with you. So we look forward to seeing you over there in just a little bit.
And if you want even more Eagles coverage and insight, please check out my podcast, Uncovering the Birds, where I take you behind the scenes each week with exclusive reporting, interviews, and everything you might have missed about your Eagles. We also do day after podcasts off the game, and this week I'll have one tomorrow with columnist Mike Sealski. You can listen to Uncovering the Birds at inquire.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Once again, that's all for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.